Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a Ukraine War Update Extra, giving you the juicy nuggets and tidbits to give you a greater contextual understanding for the war in Ukraine. Where am I going to start today? Well, I'm going to start with the letter Z. Let's start at the end of the alphabet. So, Christmas in Russia, how proud they are of their own terrorism symbols. So this is, well, actually a number of symbols. You've got the Z and the V here. These letters that originally indicated the provenance of certain pieces of equipment in the theatre of war, and told the Russians from above that they were Russian, and B told them from what area they came. But now they've come to symbolize the national identity of Russia, particularly the Z symbol. And you had that Russian athlete, I think gymnast, who had the Z on his top and was reprimanded for that. A lot of people see it now as essentially a terrorist symbol, really. But it's just bizarre that they've incorporated these into their Christmas celebratory light festivities and whatnots and decorations around. I presume this is Moscow. And there you go, the Z in a massive illuminated bauble. And yeah, more Zs. I find this quite interesting, and actually, I do understand it. So some people will be quite, annoyed with this. They find that a really offensive symbol, and for all the correct reasons. But if you're looking from a Russian point of view, this is a kind of symbol that is creating a sense of national identity now. And this is being used in a really strategic way. Obviously, this has been asked to happen by people high up, and it is for a reason. This is an insidious attempt to create a sense of national identity that the Russian people can rally around, and it solidifies the us against the them. So it has a really useful value. This symbol, these symbols. Symbolism is big, like I talked about in how you get to fascism eventually, and it's one. I mean, symbols are used in all sorts of different contexts, of course, but if you want to get to some kind of fascistic state, then symbolism becomes really, really important. So it's just another component of that. But there you go. What else am I going to show you? Well, this is a piece by Oryx. So Oryx are the guys who piece together all the bits of information floating around the internet to add up all the vehicles that have been destroyed, damaged, or captured. And as well as that, they compile lists of equipment that has been donated or given or sold to Ukraine as well. And here they are giving their summary of Belgium. So Belgium today have given a bunch of sleeping bags. And so Oryx on Twitter were kind of talking about that in not the most celebratory of manners. A show of shame, they say. Belgian weapons deliveries to Ukraine updated with sleeping bags. And the full list is here. So this is what they say, and I'll just read some of this because it is fairly interesting. So while NATO member states may have duly answered Ukraine's call to supply with heavy weapons, for other countries, President Zelensky's plight has offered a stark realization what decades of defense cuts have come to. For no country is this true more than for Belgium, which in March 2022 had to come to the painful conclusion that it had no heavy weaponry to send from its own stocks. This staggering feat is a result of years of chronic underfunding that had eroded the Belgian army to the point it could not even pay to operate man-portable air defense systems, MANPADS, any longer, leaving an entire army without any form of ground-based air defenses. Although Belgium has since announced additional investments into its military, it will take years for these investments to actually have effect. Belgium's free-riding approach to the security of other NATO member states and of itself is perhaps best illustrated by the fact that in 2014, Belgian Prime Minister De Rupo declared his country's intention to commit 2% of its GDP to defense spending by 2024, only for Prime Minister De Croo to do the same in 2022, but with the date to achieve this pushed back by 11 years to 2035. Even after rising slightly in recent years, Belgium's budget remains one of the lowest in NATO, just barely cresting 1% of GDP for the first time in years in 2022 and 2021. An early conclusion to the Russia-Ukrainian war, though unfortunately unlikely to occur at this point in time, would likely serve as a perfect excuse for a future Belgian government to keep the country's defence budget well below 2% of its GDP. Now, this is interesting in light of President Trump, actually, when he was president of the US, having a go at a lot of the other countries in the world for not, um, giving of enough funding to NATO and to their own armed forces, whereas the US does. And so he was having a go, and he was threatening to pull out of NATO, and it was all quite controversial at the time. But actually, there's certainly some truth to that. That some states do appear to pay rather less than other states, and Belgium, in this case, is one of them. So this is Oryx, pretty much shaming Belgium, and it does go on. It's an interesting read, but here, I mean, it's not they haven't given anything. They have given some ATGMs, um, some heavy mortars, a few of them, a few vehicles, some M72 laws, small arms. So those are anti-tanks, a bit like the NLAWs. Some small arms, rifles, and ammunition, and miscellaneous stuff. Night vision goggles, spare parts, generators, sleeping bags. But it's just compared to other countries, they appear to lag severely. I don't know what other help they've given. They might have been giving money directly. I don't know. So I don't want to malign Belgium too much without having the full picture. But I think this doesn't show them in a good light. Okay, let's go on to Ukrainian drone shows giant tank graveyard in Russia. I actually meant to show you this yesterday, but forgot to. So this is in Belgorod, only 7 kilometers, I believe, from the Ukrainian border. So this would actually be easy for the Ukrainians to hit with artillery. But the question is, would you want to hit already blown up tanks with artillery? No. But this has, more importantly, a repair facility. The reason why these are here is because they are being cannibalized or fixed up in order to at least have some use in terms of spare parts. Um, and this is Ukrainian Leleka 100 surveillance drone, hundreds of burnout combat vehicles at the Russian army facility located near the Ukrainian border. So here's a bit of the footage. I just thought it's 9 minutes, so you don't need to watch it all. But here you see a whole load of these tanks, IFVs, um, probably APCs as well, and even trucks and all sorts. But what would be useful to hit as a target would be these sort of maintenance or repair facilities that they have there to to damage Russia's ability to repair these vehicles and to get them back into uh, onto the front line in the hands of the Russian forces. So taking out these buildings could be a target now, and wouldn't be too difficult to do. I mean, you could do that with regular artillery. Just wouldn't be a problem. Um, so there you go. That's interesting bit of footage. There you go. So that's what actually I wanted to show you, which is the whole sort of site there. Um, so you can't really see; it's quite blurred. But you've got quite a few units over here, buildings that would be, prime prime target for artillery. Anyway, that's that. Let's move on to Bakhmut. So Bakhmut, we have 10 Wagner PMC, private military um, company. Soldiers were captured. Names and ranks are being determined. So that is good news for the Ukrainians. The reason I mention this is because actually it'll be interesting to see what these guys turn up, or what they give over in terms of information about Wagner, about how how things are working around Bakhmut, or whether they have no information. I don't know what sort of rank those soldiers are, but that's could be useful for the Ukrainians. Okay, this is, and I was unsure about showing this. I don't know whether these are just people huddled who are alive, or whether they are in fact dead. Just not unclear. So I hope it's not inappropriate to show that. But during my last appearance on the Mariah report, says Thomas Tyner, I said that winter would kill more Russian soldiers than Ukraine ever could. Today it was 6 degrees Celsius, which is 43 degrees Fahrenheit, during the day on the Donetsk front, and we got the first videos of entire Russian squads dying of hypothermia. Winter is Ukraine's ally. Whether that's what that shows, or whether these are just living people huddled, I've seen plenty of drone footage of people having munitions dropped on them or near them who just aren't moving. I mean, they're moving slightly, but they don't even really react to those munitions. And I'm wondering whether there really are a lot of very cold people lying on the ground, having to sleep outside during the night, and so on and so forth. It is not a pleasant experience, one would imagine. Here is what Dylan says. So I presume, Irish. So says 6 degrees Celsius and 0 or -1 at night is typical here in Ireland for winter temperatures. It's often worse than colder weather because it's close to freezing, but everything is soaking wet. It's impossible to keep warm outside. Much colder and drier weather is easier to handle. Even snow can be an insulator. So people die outside overnight in these temperatures quite easily, as the wet destroys any insulation in clothing and draws heat into the ground. You sit or lie down, everything is wet. It's a nightmare for people in the field, which is exactly what those people are there. They are almost certainly damp, wet, and just lying on the ground. I've seen plenty of footage of people just lying on the ground or in those foxholes or small trenches, especially static position. If you keep moving, you might live. And again, I've seen plenty of people who can barely move. They are just static, and it's just looks like it's the beginning of the end for them. This is going to be epically tragic when the real freeze hits. And someone else says, not surprising, now it's the Russians who are deep in enemy territory with stretched logistics and without the possibility to be properly fed, heated, or have proper uniform and equipment. So, Russians are not magically immune to the cold. They just held all the aces back in 1941. So this could be interesting. That's sort of making reference to um, the Second World War, obviously. This could be really problematic for the Russians. So we know that the heaps of mobilized troops have been sent to the front, and they are underfed, and they are under provided with food and equipment and decent uniform and winter gear and all this kind of stuff. That will surely lead to huge problems going forward as we go into the winter months. The Croatian government, so moving on to the next point, Croatian government has approved a training mission for Ukrainian soldiers in Croatia, according to the Ukrainian defense minister. And this is great. This is really this is really useful. The UK has been doing this. I think Poland would be providing lots of training, or at least area for other people to come and train. So it might not actually be Croatians who end up doing the training, but they're certainly providing the facilities and the area to do that. We shall see. But there are all sorts of countries providing training for the Ukrainians in many different places. Okay, on to the next one. The United States once again has offered Greece to transfer its S-300 and Tor M1 air defense systems. So these are the old kind of Soviet era defense systems, that surface-to-air missile systems that Greece has, and they've been asked several times actually to provide them for the Ukrainians. However, they don't seem to want to do that, partially because they're still afraid of Turkey, and there's that issue with Turkey, and etc. etc. But these air defense systems have been asked to be provided to Ukraine, and Greece will have their own country backfilled with American-made anti-aircraft systems. Greece didn't do that before, but this has been asked for again. Will they do it now? So they didn't do it back in June. Will they do it now? That would be, these kind of systems would be super useful for the Ukrainians. And just on that point, there are a couple of Patriot air defense systems, which are the really good systems. These are the ones that defend the White House. The Americans have a lot of Patriot systems. Now, Germany has some of these, and they are due to provide 2 on the Polish border. So, but Poland have now said, please don't provide them to us on the Polish border. Please give them straight to Ukraine. Germany have been dithering a little bit, and apparently Jens Stoltenberg from NATO stepped in and said, actually, it's up to Germany. So Germany have sort of hidden behind, well, it's got to go to a NATO nation. And NATO have come out and said, well, actually, no, if you want to give them to Ukraine, you go for it. And so I think some people are saying that actually Germany is still not doing it. It's all happening right now as I'm recording this. So, there could be new news coming out soon, whether they do end up deciding to give the Patriots systems to Ukraine. And if they do, that'll be an absolute boon for Ukraine. Here is Lancet drone footage of these loitering munitions. But what's interesting about these 2 hits is that they are not hits, and these are static targets. It's just some kind of, I don't know, system there. And this is how a howitzer. And as you can see, it just goes sort of past it there. And this one just completely misses that system. So, well done. Lancet strikes, not so good. I don't know, shouldn't be shouting about them. Okay, and next, I'm just going to show you a bunch of destroyed vehicles, but this video is doing the rounds at the moment. This one's on Ukraine Weapons Tracker. An annihilated Russian convoy in Kislivka, so that's just around Svatova, up on the northern axis from Kupiansk to Svatova to Kremina, in the Kharkiv Oblast, including this convoy includes a valuable T-90 tank. So this is why it's quite important, because not many T-90s have been seen in action. A few have been destroyed or captured, but really, you can count on one hand probably the number, which is the second one to be destroyed. So the others have been captured in Ukraine so far. 2 T-72B3 2016 tanks, a BMP-2, so that's an infantry fighting vehicle, second generation of the BMP, a cargo truck, and an IMR military engineering vehicle were also destroyed. So you wonder what takes out a convoy, like this. What kind of, is it artillery hit? Is it HIMARS? Is it GMLRS? Some other sort of type of rocket launch system? But here you go. A convoy not in the best of condition. That turret has been rejected by its former body. There's a truck. You saw the armored recovery vehicle or some kind of utility vehicle there, and then another one just off the side. Tried to escape, got onto the field, and then took one for the team. There you go. So that's a column destroyed. I'd be interested to see what people think about what would destroy a whole column like that, whether it's ambushed or whether you think it was hit by something else like artillery. And finally, I want to point you to an article I've just written. I wrote this yesterday. Well, actually, I wrote it over 2 days, but it was published yesterday on Only Sky. It's pertinent to all the things we're talking about, or that I talk about regularly. So you can go to onlysky.media/ and if you just put in J Pierce, it will come up with my articles. And the most recent one is this one. Erdogan uses smoke and mirrors and deadly strikes against the Kurds. It doesn't sound like it's particularly to do with Russia, but it is. It's to do with the Russia-Ukraine war, and the fact that he's using that as kind of smoke and mirrors to advance his own agenda against the Kurds in Syria. And he has placed his feet on both sides, or one foot on each side of the fence, speaks out of both sides of his mouth in giving Ukraine help with military aid, mediating the grain deal, but also allowing Russia to still continue doing heaps of trade with it and making a whole bunch of money out of it, out of that scenario. So he's kind of like playing everyone really in this game and to his own advantage and to the advantage of Turkey. So on the international stage, Turkey has really become quite a prominent player. He's really given a lot more currency to Turkey in that sphere. But at the same time, he's having issues domestically because inflation was recently at 85%, big economic problems for Turkey, and he's got an election looming next year. So, what better thing to do when an election is looming than have a scapegoat, take take on an enemy or reprise a conflict that has been ongoing, as this one has with the Kurds. And so there are now these strikes that are being organized into Syrian territory against the Syrian Kurds. That he sees as an extension of the PKK, which is the Turkish uprising political group that he sees as a terrorist organization. And yeah, so it's about that. It's about what Erdogan has done with regard to Russia and Ukraine, and the idea that, interestingly, both the US and Russia are united against Turkey doing this. So Russia are on Assad's side, who is the leader of Syria. Russia have been defending him, and so for Turkey to essentially make an incursion into Syrian territory to attack the Kurds is kind of a bit of a problem. But on the other hand, the Kurds have been the allies of the US and other Western players during the time of the Syrian civil war, because they have been fighting against ISIL, the Islamic fundamentalists. And in fact, if you remember Kobani back in 2014-15 and their heroic fighting there, America have been really thankful for the Kurds, but then left them in the lurch. Trump pulled out in 2019, I think it was, and left the Kurds in the lurch. So, but they still, America still values the Kurds hugely in doing the kind of gritty work, dirty work for them. So they don't want Erdogan to attack the Kurds equally. And it's really interesting because I think Erdogan's positioned himself in such a place now where he feels confident enough to basically ignore both Russia and the US here to achieve his own goals and objectives, aligning with his domestic political agenda. So anyway, there's a whole piece on that. It's a pretty substantial piece. I'd be really interested to see. It'd be great if you guys could read it, or some of you read it, and let me know what you think. Do you think that I've sort of hit the nail on the head with this piece? It is supposed to be a bit of an explainer as well. So if you don't particularly understand what's going on in that region, obviously you can't go into too much detail because these are huge conflicts, all the ones I talk about. But whether it's a useful article as an explainer, as well as detailing how Erdogan is playing both sides here. There you go. Erdogan uses smoke and mirrors in deadly strikes against Kurds on Only Sky. And it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention my channel members. Thank you to Lee Dixon and Prey Chong, who have joined just recently. They joined the list of members who help to support the work I do. I'm going to read them out because they are all legends. Sabra Bursevicht, Chindi Chimbaloo, Ricky Johnson, Vaguely Agnostic, Mon Kismo, Mitch Mazarol, Craig McLemore, John Neyrich, Ionanis Kilioris or Ionanis Kilioris, Bo Janssen, RNH Endersby, Holly Irving, John Lloyd, Andres Erdovics, Prey Chong, and Lee Dixon. Thank you so much. You are awesome. If you want to help in any other way, there's always Buy Me a Coffee, PayPal, and YouTube thanks. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, subscribe to this channel ATP Geopolitics if you haven't. I will be alternating for the next few days before bringing all my extra videos over to here.